North Korea fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles this morning, its second provocation in the past 3 days. The latest launch comes just 1 day after Seoul, Washington's joint exercises. In Germany, South Korea's foreign minister met his Japanese counterpart and asked Tokyo for a sincere response on the issue of compensating Korean victims of Japan's wartime forced labor. South Korea's eco-friendly car exports post an all-time high in January on an overall rise in auto exports. Good afternoon. Our top story this Monday. North Korea has fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles in protest against South Korea and the United States joint exercise. That drill was conducted in response to the regime's launching of an intercontinental ballistic missile over the weekend. Our defense correspondent Oh Soo-young has the latest.
North Korea has fired a second round of ballistic missiles in the space of a few days, with the North's leadership warning it would turn the Pacific into a shooting range. The South Korean military says the North shot 2 short-range ballistic missiles around 7 a.m. on Monday. One flew 390 kilometers and the other flew 340 kilometers towards the East Sea. A report by North Korea's state media soon confirmed the launches with similar estimates, saying its missiles were fired from its latest 600mm multiple rocket launcher. The report accused South Korea and the United States of hostile actions, describing their joint air exercise conducted the day before. Flying 10 aircraft, including 2 B-1B strategic bombers, an advanced strategic asset over the Korean peninsula, the Allies' air drill was a response to the North launching an intercontinental ballistic missile into waters off Japan's west coast on Saturday. The Hwasong-15 ICBM launch was the regime's first in 3 months, in apparent protest against the upcoming joint drills by South Korea and the US. The Allies plan to hold tabletop exercises at the Pentagon this week, discussing scenarios involving a North Korean nuclear attack. They will also hold the annual Freedom Shield exercise in March, featuring defense-oriented computer simulator training. The North has always used such drills as an excuse to further escalate its aggression. Regime leader Kim Jong-un's sister was quoted on state media Monday as saying that the frequency of the North's use of the Pacific as a shooting range depends on the actions of the US. The South and the US believe the North is likely to increase its provocations over the coming weeks as it has key state anniversaries and a satellite launch coming up in April. Since last year, Seoul and Washington have been looking at ways to strengthen their extended deterrence policy, which promises the US will aid its ally under nuclear or conventional attack. According to Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff, the 2 allies are also bolstering trilateral cooperation with Japan through measures like intel sharing. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
South Korea has slapped more sanctions on North Korea over its missile and nuclear programs. The Foreign Ministry on Monday announced the latest round of sanctions on 4 individuals and 5 entities, including 2 companies registered in Singapore. It said those on the list have contributed to Pyongyang's missile and nuclear development, including being involved in transporting and exporting commodities like fuel. This is the 4th independent sanction slapped on the regime by Seoul since President Yoon Suk-yeol took office. The ministry says the latest sanctions will raise global awareness of the gravity of North Korea's provocations. Now turning over to Turkey and Syria. 2 weeks on since the devastating earthquake, rescue operations are coming to an end as the hope of finding more survivors fades. The focus moving forward is on helping the survivors swiftly recover. Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
Turkish authorities have almost completely brought search and rescue operations to an end 14 days after the initial earthquake struck. With more than 40,000 dead in Türkiye and some 5,800 more in Syria, the death toll in the 2 countries surpassed 46,000. Authorities add that more than 5,700 aftershocks were also reported in Türkiye. In Turkey alone, a total of 180,000 personnel, including the military and police, conducted search and rescue operations in the affected regions, which also included 11,500 rescuers from 80 countries, including South Korea, being dispatched. Even with miracle stories of survivors who lasted more than 10 days under rubble, authorities have now shifted their focus to the survivors, ultimately concluding their search and rescue operations.
It's a bit troublesome to live in a place with 5,000 people after living in a home with 5 people. There might be queues for food and toilet.
And much of the attention is given to the young survivors of the deadly earthquakes. Residents of neighboring cities in Türkiye, less affected by the earthquakes, came together to create a space for the children. Counselors and teachers were also assigned to provide emotional support, with the focus now on the children's psychological well-being.
We came here to make children who are affected by the earthquake smile. We came here to touch their hearts. I studied child development. As I said, I'm here to make use of my knowledge in the best way I can.
Authorities continue to stress the importance of psychological assistance for the survivors, especially the children, many of whom have been left orphaned and homeless. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
On the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference, South Korea and Japan's foreign ministers held their separate bilateral meeting on compensating Korean victims forced into labor during Japan's colonial rule. While the contribution by Japanese companies remains a major controversy, Seoul's top diplomat called for Tokyo's sincere response. Choi Min-jung reports.
South Korea's Foreign Minister Park Jin met with his Japanese counterpart Yoshimasa Hayashi and urged Japan to make a political decision to resolve the issue of compensating Korean victims of Japan's wartime forced labor. The two held a separate one-on-one meeting in Germany on Saturday on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference. After the meeting, Park told the press that he has said all he can about the main issues and called on Japan to make a political decision to come up with a sincere response. Seoul's foreign ministry also said in a statement that the two diplomats agreed to communicate closely to resolve the thorny issue. The Japanese Foreign Ministry said the top officials had a frank discussion and agreed to close communications on each diplomatic level. Saturday's talk was Park and Hayashi's 5th meeting since President Yoon took office. The meeting also followed a series of recent working-level talks between the two countries on the issue. Last week, Seoul and Tokyo's first vice foreign minister sat down in Washington to discuss the ongoing dispute without reaching a conclusion. In January, Seoul unveiled plans to compensate the victims through its own public foundation. However, this prompted backlash from the victims, who insist the issue cannot be resolved without a sincere apology and participation from the Japanese companies involved. In landmark rulings in 2018, South Korea's Supreme Court ordered 2 Japanese companies, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries and Nippon Steel, to compensate the Koreans they subjected to forced labor, but those firms have refused to comply with the orders. Tokyo says the issue of compensation was settled under a normalization treaty signed in 1965. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Also on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference on Saturday, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and China's top diplomat Wang Yi held their first face-to-face since Washington shot down a suspected Chinese surveillance balloon. But that meeting did little to ease diplomatic tensions. According to the U.S. State Department, during an hour-long meeting on Saturday, Blinken once again chided Beijing over the balloon incident, calling it an unacceptable violation of U.S. sovereignty and international law. Earlier at the MSC, Wang Yi had called the U.S. response an abuse of the use of force, maintaining that the balloon was civilian research aircraft accidentally blown off course. This year's Munich Security Conference was held over the weekend, as the war in Ukraine has now been going on nearly 1 year. Global leaders took the event as a chance to call for more support for Ukraine. The U.S., in the meantime, warned China against supplying weapons to Russia. Our Moon Hae-ryung reports.
The 3-day Munich Security Conference came to a close on Sunday local time. Topping the agenda this time round was the almost year-long war in Ukraine. During an interview with Germany's Bild am Sonntag newspaper on the last day of the conference, Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko called on NATO allies to supply Ukraine with fighter jets to fend off Russian forces. Klitschko added that Ukrainians need everything that is necessary to take back their home country. Global leaders who took part in the conference also voiced similar opinions. The European Union's chief diplomat, Josep Borrell, stressed the importance of increasing and accelerating the EU's military support for Ukraine, saying there's still a lot to be done. Estonia's Prime Minister also recommended that the EU should pool resources to speed up ammunition production and deliveries to Ukraine. Besides arms shortage, another possible obstacle to ending the war: the supply of weapons to Russia from China. During an interview with CNN on Sunday, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, said that Beijing would cross a red line if it provides lethal military aid to Moscow. This comes after U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken raised the issue when he met with his Chinese counterpart, Wang Yi, on Saturday on the sidelines of the conference. After the meeting, Blinken told CBS News that Chinese companies were already providing non-lethal support to Russia, and based on new information, there are concerns these companies could be considering providing lethal support as well. He added that this would result in serious consequences for China. 문혜련, Arirang News.
Budgets were actually going down.
Turning to the auto industry, South Korea's auto exports hit fresh highs for the month of January on the back of strong performance of eco-friendly cars. Our Shin Na-young reports.
Even though South Korea has seen a decline in its overall exports recently, car makers posted record high exports for the month of January. According to the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy, the value of car exports last month came to over $4.98 billion with an on-year increase of nearly 22%. The number of cars exported also rose about 11% from the previous year to over 200,000 vehicles. This was mainly thanks to the popularity of environmentally friendly cars. In terms of units, an all-time high 57,000 eco-friendly cars, including hydrogen and hybrid vehicles, were exported last month with an on-year rise of nearly 30%. The dollar value of these vehicle exports also jumped to a record figure, reaching nearly $1.8 billion, up around 42% from the same month a year earlier. The ministry attributed it to the strong performance of electric cars, which saw an on-year rise of 67%. Behind the popularity of EVs, there was a steady demand for Hyundai's electric car, the Ioniq 5, and Kia's EV6 model, while the overseas release of the Ioniq 6 also had an impact. Hybrid cars also contributed to the overall auto exports, with their exports up by 13% from a year earlier. Meanwhile, exports of related components dropped by about 16% from the year before as the exports to China declined. Shin Na-young, Arirang News.
Import tariffs on liquefied natural gas, or LNG, increased by more than 70% last year amid soaring energy prices. According to Korea Customs Service on Monday, the total import tariff on LNG last year came to over $6 billion, up 71.2% on year. Although the government had temporarily lowered customs tax to 0% for heating purpose LNG in 2021, the associated value-added tax more than doubled from a year earlier, pushing the total up. One official from the Korea Customs Service says it is inevitable for tariffs to rise as sky-high energy prices remain. More details are out on how South Korea will advance its tech sector to drive its future growth. A set of plans were unveiled during an emergency economic meeting on Monday, with the Land and Transport Minister saying South Korea aims to introduce robot deliveries by 2026 and drone deliveries by 2027. These new technologies are expected to revolutionize the delivery industry, making it faster and more efficient than before. This is in line with the government's latest development blueprint, New Growth Strategy 4.0, which covers 15 different projects, including space exploration and the expansion of the next generation 6G digital network. After 3 years of hiatus due to the pandemic, Incheon International Airport is resuming its tours for transit passengers. It allows people passing through the airport to get a glimpse of South Korea, even if that's only for a few hours. Our Song Yoo-jin reports.
With countries around the world easing border controls and travel restrictions, airports are once again packed with excited travelers. South Korea's Incheon International Airport is no exception. Before COVID-19, the airport handled around 200,000 passengers every day. The figure dropped to as low as around 2,500 when the pandemic peaked, but now it's back up to 130,000. To cater to the growing demand, Incheon International Airport resumed its signature transit tour after a 3-year pandemic hiatus.
Transit tours allow layover passengers of Incheon International Airport to experience both modern and traditional Korean culture while they are waiting for their next flight.
And I had a chance to enjoy the world's one and only transit tour. Out of the 7 themes, I chose tradition. The tour bus carrying tourists who had booked beforehand departs from the airport and heads to its first stop, Gyeongbokgung Palace, the first and main palace of the Joseon dynasty from 1392 to 1910. An hour is enough to enjoy the epic architecture and rich history.
I think it makes the whole wait a lot more interesting and fun because other than waiting at the airport, there's not much to do. So it's a great way to see the city in a short amount of time. And then you get to catch your flight after.
The next stop is the nearby Insadong Street. Travelers can take a look around local shops, art galleries, grab a bite to eat at traditional style restaurants, and have a cup of coffee.
I've been to Asia, but I've never been to Northern Asia before, so I'm enjoying it. I like it. I like the little streets. I like the signs and the shops and stuff. It's unique and exciting. Yeah.
The last stop of the 5-hour tour, back to the airport to catch the flight. So this is the end of the transit tour. Besides this one, there are a lot of more courses offered, each with their own theme, ranging from shopping to history and even a tour to the DMZ. A vacation in Korea can be one way to enjoy the country, but now even a layover can be another way to experience some of the popular sights and sounds of Korea. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
A special ceremony took place to celebrate the entrance and graduation of patients who are suffering from a rare type of muscle disease. Just like Stephen Hawking, the world-renowned physicist who suffered from a similar disease, these students didn't let their condition stop from their pursuing higher education. Our Kim Jung-sil has a story.
A moment to celebrate the years of hard work for the 18 students who are either entering their freshman year of college, continuing with their studies, or graduating with a diploma. All suffer from different types and levels of muscular dystrophy, a rare muscle-related disease that can hinder people from walking, talking, and even breathing. At the Pulmonary Rehabilitation Center here at Yeonse Gangnam Severance Hospital, customized treatment for each individual has enabled these students to finish school. Meet soon-to-be college freshman Minu, who was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA, at the age of 5, a genetic disease that significantly weakens muscles, making it difficult to breathe or concentrate. But the treatment at the center helped him overcome some of the difficulties.
네, 그것도 있고 체력적으로도 좀 더 오랜 시간 앉아 있을 수 있게도 해주고 합니다.
Dr. Min Kyung-hyun, on the other hand, recently got his PhD degree in physics from Yonsei University. Calling himself a huge admirer of British physicist Stephen Hawking, Dr. Min wrote his graduation thesis using just one index finger on his keyboard.
뭔가 제가 도움이 되거나 할 수 있는 일이 있으면 뭐 취업을 하든 뭐 저희 교수님은 계속 책을 좀 썼으면 좋겠다고 하시는데 뭐 가능하면 네, 뭐든지 도움이 되는 일 하고 싶습니다.
Professor Kang Sung-woo looked over all of these students.
All I did was just help them breathe better. They couldn't even click a mouse button freely. And look at what they've achieved. It's so inspiring. As a doctor, I feel extremely rewarded.
He also said that he has a message to medical experts abroad.
We offer free educational opportunities for foreign medical experts. We think it's important that medical experts abroad can treat their patients in their own country. So if you're interested in pulmonary rehabilitation procedures, please reach out.
Professor Kang stressed that these types of rare muscle-related diseases are extremely difficult to cure, but that there is a way to live with them. He said that just like his patients, he hopes that more people around the world do not give up on their dreams. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In Bulgaria, 6 people have been charged with involuntary manslaughter and human trafficking in connection with the deaths of over 8 dozen migrants. 5 suspects are in custody and 1 has fled the country following the discovery of 18 dead migrants in an abandoned truck. Authorities found the vehicle on a dirt road just outside of the capital of Sofia on Friday local time. A total of 52 people from Afghanistan were found in hidden compartments in the truck, cramped together in wet and cold conditions. They had not eaten in days. According to prosecutors, the 18 deaths were caused by a lack of oxygen. The case comes as the European country has seen a surge in cases of human smuggling as thousands look to flee war and poverty. Bulgaria is commonly used as a gateway for migrants from the Middle East, Africa and Asia to enter the EU. Now moving on, the body of late Ghanaian footballer Christian Atsu has been returned to Ghana. His remains arrived in the capital Accra on Sunday local time. It comes a day after his body was discovered in the earthquake rubble of his Turkish apartment in Antakya, Hatay. The 31-year-old had been missing since February 6th when earthquakes struck the region, killing over 40,000 people across Türkiye and Syria. Atsu was playing for local Turkish club Hatayspor after joining last September. He had scored the winning goal in a local Super League match the day before the disaster. Throughout his career, Atsu played at several well-known clubs, including Porto, Everton and Newcastle United. He also made 65 appearances for Ghana, scoring 10 goals. Turning over to tech news, Meta is set to launch its own paid verification service this week. Rolling out on its Instagram and Facebook platforms, the service will first be released in Australia and New Zealand. Called Meta Verified, it will give user accounts a blue badge and will cost around $12 per month for its web version and around $15 for Apple phone users. According to Meta, the benefits include more post visibility, protection from fake accounts, and a direct line to customer support. Users wanting the service will need to have a profile picture on both platforms that includes their face and a name that matches a government-issued ID. The new Meta service comes after Twitter introduced a similar plan in November called Twitter Blue. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. It's a much colder start to the new week. A sudden temperature drop is making it feel so much colder, along with the sharp winds today. And afternoon highs are 3 to 5 degrees lower than Sunday. If you shivered today's morning cold, dress warmer tomorrow. The brief cold snap will hit its peak tomorrow morning, going down to below -5 degrees Celsius here in the capital, feeling more like -10. And it's going to remain colder than seasonal norms through Wednesday morning. Other than chillier temperatures, sunshine will dominate nationwide with good air to breathe in. Afternoon highs are 3 to 5 degrees lower than Sunday in most parts of the country, but it will feel sub-zero in Seoul all day, while southern provinces will have a much more bearable afternoon, with Jeju Island under a strong wind advisory today. And it's forecast to be quite windy on Jeju through grow tomorrow, so please be mindful of that. And the cold snap eases as we head towards the end of the week with bright skies, except on Jeju, where rain is in the forecast from Thursday into Friday. With that in mind, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of the day.